The Coalition assembly station floated in the darkness of space like a giant crystal flower. Inside its gleaming halls, representatives from dozens of alien species gathered for an emergency meeting. The room buzzed with worried voices in 100 different languages. Outside the massive windows, sleek warships patrolled in perfect formation. Their hulls shimmered with advanced technology that humanity could only dream of building. Then something slow appeared on the horizon. Very slow. The KRSF Tuguk emerged from faster-than-light travel like an old truck, pulling into a parking lot full of sports cars. The human warship was big and bulky. Its hull was gray and practical, covered with industrial plating that looked more suitable for mining asteroids than fighting wars. Compared to the elegant alien vessels around it, the Tuguk looked almost embarrassing. Inside the assembly hall, a Keltharian diplomat noticed the human ship's arrival on the display screen. Keltharians were tall beings made of living crystal, and they prided themselves on precision and efficiency. The diplomat's crystalline face reflected amusement as he watched the Tuguk's painfully slow approach. "Is that the human contribution?" he asked another delegate. "It moves like a wounded space slug." Laughter rippled through the nearby aliens. Even in a crisis, the sight of such an outdated vessel was hard to take seriously. The Vexcar Empire was threatening to invade Coalition space with the most powerful armada ever assembled, and humanity had sent this? It was almost insulting. Captain Kim Doyen sat in his command chair aboard the Tuguk, watching the station grow larger on the main view screen. He was a man in his late 40s with tired eyes that had seen too many battles. His uniform was neat but worn. Everything about him suggested someone who had earned his position through experience rather than privilege. "They are laughing at us, Captain," said Commander Park Hana from her station. She was younger than Doyen, sharp-featured and intense. Her fingers danced across her console as she monitored the alien communications. "I am picking up their private channels. They think we are a joke." Doyen allowed himself a small smile. "Good. Let them laugh. Underestimation is a gift." Lieutenant Lee Minho looked up from the engineering station. He was a thin man with oil stains on his uniform and wild hair that never seemed to stay combed. "Sir, our engines are running at only 60% efficiency. If we push them harder, they might explode." "Then we will not push them harder," Doyen replied calmly. "We will work with what we have. That is what humans do best." Ensign Choi Jiwoo sat at the communications station, her young face showing nervous excitement. This was her first deep space mission, and she could feel the weight of representing her entire species. "Captain, we have clearance to dock." Station control sounds amused. "Of course they do," Doyen said. "Take us in, steady as she goes." The briefing room was enormous, designed to accommodate the variety of alien body types in the Coalition. Admiral Threxfall stood at the center, his crystalline body refracting light in beautiful patterns. He was the fleet commander, and his reputation was legendary. He had won dozens of battles using speed and precision. When Captain Doyen and Commander Park Hana entered, several aliens turned to look. Some showed curiosity. Most showed thinly veiled contempt. Humans were the newest members of the Coalition, barely 2 generations into space travel. They were considered primitive by galactic standards. "Ah, our human friends have arrived," Admiral Threxfall said. His voice was like wind chimes. "Please join us." Doyun and Hana took seats at the massive circular table. The holographic display at the center showed a terrifying sight. Hundreds of red icons representing Vexcar warships advancing through space like a swarm of angry hornets. "The situation is dire," Threxfall continued. "The Vexcar Empire has assembled the largest invasion force in recorded history. They have already destroyed 3 colony worlds. Our intelligence suggests they are targeting the Nexus Point system. If they control that strategic location, they can strike deep into Coalition territory." A Phyraxian commander named Yixla leaned forward. Phyraxians looked like giant mantises, bred for war over millions of years of evolution. Yixla's mandibles clicked with irritation. "Our strategy is simple. We use our superior speed to conduct hit-and-run attacks. We bleed them before they reach Nexus Point. Then we defend the choke point with our fastest, most advanced vessels." Doyen raised his hand politely. "Admiral, if I may suggest an alternative approach." The room went quiet. Several aliens exchanged glances. A human offering tactical advice? This should be entertaining. "Please, Captain, share your thoughts." Threxval said with barely concealed condescension. The Vexcar expect you to use speed, Doyen said, studying the tactical display. They have likely prepared countermeasures. On Earth we have a saying, never fight your enemy on their terms. Instead of running, what if we made them come to us? Force them into terrain where their numbers work against them? Yixla made a sound like clicking laughter. Terrain? This is space human. There is no terrain. And we cannot simply hide behind asteroids like frightened children. We are warriors. Of course, Doyen said quietly, sitting back. Forgive my ignorance. Commander Park Hana kept her expression neutral, but inside she was angry. These aliens had no idea what they were dismissing. Human military history was filled with examples of weaker forces defeating stronger ones through clever tactics. But there was no point arguing. Not yet. The briefing continued for another hour. The coalition strategy was finalized. Fast attack ships would harass the Vexcar advance while the main fleet prepared defensive positions. The Teguk was assigned to rearguard duty, far from the actual fighting. Essentially, they were being told to stay out of the way. Your ship is too slow to participate in our mobile tactics, Threxval explained, trying to sound diplomatic. But your presence is valued. You will ensure our supply lines remain secure. It was a polite way of saying, stay in the back where you cannot cause problems. Doyen accepted the orders with a simple nod. Back aboard the Taiguk, the crew gathered in the mess hall. The mood was somber. Lieutenant Minho was the first to speak, his voice bitter. They think we are useless. They gave us babysitting duty. They gave us what they think we deserve, said Dr. Kang Suho, the ship's medical officer. He was an older man with gentle eyes and steady hands. But maybe that gives us freedom to act when the moment comes. Ensign Jiwoo looked around at her crewmates. Do you think we will even see combat, or will the war be over before we get there? Captain Doyen entered the mess hall and everyone stood at attention. He waved them back to their seats. Listen to me carefully, he said, his voice carrying quiet authority. The aliens out there have faster ships. They have better weapons. They have technology we cannot match. But they have forgotten something important. He paused, looking each crew member in the eye. They have forgotten that humanity did not reach the stars by having the best equipment. We got here by refusing to quit, by adapting, by surviving when everyone said we could not. That is our advantage. When things go wrong, and they will go wrong, we will still be here, still fighting. That is what makes us human. The crew sat straighter. Doyen's words were simple, but they rang true. They were not the best equipped, but they were survivors. 2 days later, the coalition fleet detected the Vexcar Armada on long-range sensors. Commander Yixla's squadron rushed ahead for first contact. The aliens were eager to prove their superiority. The Teguk followed far behind, its slow engine struggling to keep pace. The first skirmish was brief and decisive. Yixla's ships darted through the Vexcar formation like angry wasps, firing advanced weapons that could slice through armor. They destroyed several enemy scouts and retreated before taking serious damage. By all measures, it was a victory. But Commander Hana, watching from the Teguk's tactical station, saw something else. She saw predictable patterns. The coalition ships always attacked from the same angles, used the same retreat paths, relied on the same technological advantages. The Vexcar were learning. Captain, she said quietly, the enemy is adapting to their tactics. Next time will be harder. Doyen nodded. Then we prepare for when harder becomes impossible. Get me Lieutenant Minho. When Minho arrived, Doyen gave him a simple order. Make the Taiguk dangerous in ways the aliens would never expect. No rules, no regulations, just results. Minho's eyes lit up with mischievous excitement. Sir, you are going to love what I have in mind. 3 days after the first skirmish, the coalition fleet's sensors detected something that made every commander's blood run cold. The main Vexcar Armada was visible now, and it was massive. Hundreds of warships filled the sensors, more than anyone had predicted. Admiral Threxval called an emergency meeting. His crystalline face, usually so composed, showed cracks of stress. We are outnumbered 3-1. Perhaps retreat is wise, the other commanders argued loudly. Some wanted to fight, others wanted to run. Nobody noticed Captain Doyen sitting quietly in the corner, studying the tactical display with intense focus. Because while the aliens were panicking about numbers and firepower, Doyen was thinking about something else entirely. He was thinking about how humans hunted on ancient Earth, not with speed or strength, but with patience and cunning. The war was about to change. The aliens just did not know it yet. Admiral Threxfall made his decision. The Coalition fleet would make it stand at Nexus Point, a strategic choke point between two massive asteroid fields. His plan was elegant and precise, just like everything the Keltharians did. The fast attack ships would dart in and out of the asteroid fields, using hit-and-run tactics to wear down the Vexcar armada before the main battle. The Teguk, of course, would stay in the rear. Far from danger, far from glory. Captain Doyun listened to his orders without complaint. He simply nodded and returned to his ship. Commander Hana followed him to his ready room. Where they could speak privately, they expect us to hide, Hana said bluntly. Doyun poured 2 cups of coffee, an earth beverage that other species found strange and bitter. Then we will not hide. We will prepare. What do you have in mind? Doyun pulled up a tactical display. The enemy expects speed and technology. They have built their entire strategy around countering those advantages, but they have no protocols for dealing with something unpredictable, something that fights dirty. Hana smiled slowly. You want to change the rules. I want to write new ones. Down in engineering, Lieutenant Minho was already hard at work. The engine room of the Teguk was a maze of pipes, conduits, and machinery that would look ancient to most aliens. But Minho saw potential everywhere. He stood before a massive industrial mining laser, the kind used to cut through asteroids when searching for minerals. It was slow, inefficient for combat, and definitely not a weapon by military standards. But Minho was not thinking about military standards. He grabbed a wrench and got to work. His engineering team watched with mixture of excitement and concern. When Lieutenant Minho started improvising, things either worked brilliantly or exploded. Sometimes both. What are you doing, sir? Asked one young technician. Minho grinned without looking up. I am turning mining equipment into weapons of war. The Vexcar have armor designed to withstand plasma weapons and energy beams, but these lasers were built to cut through solid rock. Different principles. Different physics. Will it work? No idea. But that is what makes it fun. In the medical bay, Dr. Kang Suho was conducting research of his own. He had spent years studying alien biology, and now he was looking for weaknesses. The Vexcar were a reptilian species, evolved as apex predators on a harsh world. Their senses were sharp, their reactions fast, but every strength had a corresponding weakness. Suho pulled up biological data on his screen. The Vexcar visual system was optimized for tracking movement. Their hearing could detect frequencies humans could not. Their sense of smell was extraordinary. They were built to hunt, which meant they could be overwhelmed by sensory input. He compiled his findings and sent them to Commander Hana. She would know what to do with the information. Meanwhile, Ensign Jiwoo was at her station on the bridge, running communication drills. But she could not focus. Her hands shook slightly as she worked. This was not training anymore. This was real. People were going to die. Commander Hana noticed and sat down beside her. Your first combat situation? She said quietly. Jiwoo nodded, not trusting herself to speak. I was terrified during my first battle, Hana admitted. I almost froze at my console. Do you know what helped me? What? I stopped thinking about myself. I thought about all the people depending on me to do my job. Fear does not go away, but purpose is stronger than fear. Jiwoo took a deep breath and straightened her shoulders. Thank you, Commander, Hana smiled. You will do fine. And remember, humans are survivors. That includes you. 2 days later, the Vexcar armada arrived at Nexus Point. The sight was terrifying. Hundreds of warships emerged from faster-than-light travel in perfect formation, their hulls dark and menacing. Each ship bristled with weapons. This was not a raid or a skirmish. This was an invasion force designed to crush all resistance. Admiral Threxfall gave the order, and the Coalition fleet sprang into action. Fast attack ships darted forward, weaving through the asteroid fields with impressive skill. They fired their weapons and retreated before the Vexcar could respond effectively. It was beautiful to watch, like a deadly dance. But the Vexcar were ready. They had studied Coalition tactics. When the next wave of attack ships rushed in, they found the enemy waiting. Vexcar fighters swarmed out of nowhere and the battle turned brutal. Coalition ships exploded in brilliant flashes. Others retreated with severe damage. Commander Yixla fought like a demon, her squadron cutting through enemy fighters with precision strikes. But even she could not turn the tide. The Vexcar had superior numbers and were coordinating their attacks with cold efficiency. Within the first hour, the coalition had lost 30% of its forces. Admiral Threxvoll's voice came across all channels. All ships fall back to defensive positions. We cannot sustain these losses. The coalition fleet began a fighting retreat, still firing as they pulled back. The Vexcar pursued relentlessly. Victory was within their grasp. Then Admiral Threxvoll remembered the human ship. Teguk, retreat immediately. Your vessel is too slow to escape if the enemy breaks through. On the Teguk's bridge, Captain Doyen stood with his hands behind his back, watching the tactical display. His crew waited for his orders. The smart thing to do was retreat. The safe thing. The logical thing. Doyen had never been particularly interested in logic. Ensign Jiwoo, open a channel to the Vexcar fleet. All frequencies. I want everyone to hear this. Sir? Jiwoo looked uncertain. Do it. The channel opened. Doyen spoke in the Vexcar language, words that Commander Hana had helped him prepare. He knew Vexcar culture valued individual combat prowess above all else. They respected strength. They despised cowardice. I am Captain Kim Doyen of the human warship Teguk. I challenge the Overlord Krevthak to face me in combat. Or does the great warlord only fight from behind walls of ships? Does he fear a single human vessel? Perhaps the rumors are true. Perhaps he is no warrior at all, but a coward hiding behind his fleet. The entire battle seemed to pause. Every ship, coalition, and Vexcar alike received the transmission. Commander Hana gripped her console tightly, knowing what Doyen had just done. He had issued a mortal insult in a culture where honor meant everything. Aboard the Vexcar flagship, Overlord Krevthak heard the challenge. His officers watched as his reptilian face contorted with rage. No one had ever dared speak to him this way. The insult could not be ignored. Would not be ignored. Krevthak gave the order. 50 ships broke formation and turned toward the Teguk. They would crush this insolent human and make an example of his corpse. Admiral Threxvoll watched in horror. What is that human doing? He has just killed himself and his entire crew. But Doyen was not planning to die. He was planning to hunt all stations, battle stations, he said calmly.
Minho, are we ready?
From engineering, Minho's voice came through, barely containing his excitement. Oh, we are ready. This is going to be amazing or catastrophic. Maybe both. Hana, implement psychological warfare protocol. With pleasure, Captain. The Teguk turned and began moving toward the asteroid field. It looked like a retreat, but the pace was measured, controlled. The 50 Vexcar ships pursued eagerly, ready to tear the human vessel apart. As the enemy ships entered the asteroid field, Doyen gave a single command. Now. Lieutenant Minho triggered the electromagnetic pulse mines that he had spent 2 days hiding throughout the asteroid field. They were not standard military equipment. They were improvised from spare parts, reactor cores, and Minho's borderline insane genius. The mines detonated in a cascading wave of electromagnetic energy. Vexcar ships lost power instantly, their sophisticated systems completely fried. They drifted helplessly, nothing more than floating metal coffins. Before they could recover, the Teguk opened fire. But not with conventional weapons. The modified mining lasers lanced out, beams of concentrated energy designed to cut through solid rock. Vexcar armor, built to disperse plasma and deflect energy weapons, had no defense against this. The lasers sliced through hulls like knives through paper. Simultaneously, Commander Hana activated her psychological warfare protocol. The Teguk's external lights began strobing at specific frequencies, based on Dr. Suho's research into Vexcar biology. The lights caused immediate disorientation in the reptilian nervous system. Audio transmissions on frequencies that induced fear responses flooded their communications. False sensor data made them see phantom threats everywhere. The Vexcar ships, already disabled and confused, became completely overwhelmed. Some fired on each other, unable to distinguish friend from foe. Others simply floated, their crews incapacitated by sensory overload. In 28 minutes, the Teguk destroyed or disabled 40 enemy warships. Without taking a single hit, the rest of the Vexcar fleet stopped their advance. They had never encountered anything like this. Their commanders frantically tried to understand what had just happened. How had one primitive ship destroyed 50 of their vessels? The coalition fleet watched in stunned silence. Admiral Threxvoll stared at his tactical display, trying to process what his sensors were telling him. It seemed impossible. The slow, outdated human ship had just accomplished what his entire fleet could not. Commander Yixla spoke slowly, her voice filled with something that might have been respect. What? What are they? Aboard the Teguk, Captain Doyen allowed himself a small smile. Lieutenant Minho, damage report. After the Battle of Nexus Point, everything changed. The Coalition fleet regrouped at a safe distance, counting their losses and trying to understand what they had witnessed. The Vexcar had retreated, their formation broken and their confidence shattered. They had lost over 60 ships, while the Coalition casualties had actually decreased once the humans had entered the fight. Admiral Threxval called for a commander's meeting. This time, Captain Doyen was not an afterthought seated in the back. He was at the main table with every alien eye upon him. The Admiral's crystalline face showed something humans had not seen before. Genuine respect. Captain Doyen, I owe you an apology. I dismissed your suggestions. I dismissed your entire species. That was a grave error in judgment. Doyen inclined his head slightly. We all make assumptions, Admiral. The important thing is that we learn from them. Commander Yixla leaned forward, her mandibles clicking with interest. Your tactics were unlike anything in our military databases. You did not try to match our technology or our speed. You created entirely new conditions for battle. How Commander Hana spoke up. On Earth we have a saying. If you find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics are wrong. We do not believe in fighting fair. We believe in winning. Several aliens shifted uncomfortably. This philosophy was contrary to thousands of years of galactic military tradition, which emphasized honor and direct combat. But they could not argue with results. Tell me, Doyen said, looking around the table. What did you all see when you first looked at the Teguk? The alien commanders exchanged glances. Finally, one spoke. An outdated vessel, slow, poorly armed. A liability, exactly, Doyen said. That is what we wanted you to see. Because if we cannot be the fastest or the strongest, we can be the most underestimated. And underestimation is a tactical advantage. The meeting continued for hours. The Coalition commanders wanted to know everything about human tactics. How did they think? How did they plan? What made them so adaptable? But across the void of space in the Vexcar flagship, a different kind of meeting was taking place. Overlord Krevthak stood before a holographic display showing the destroyed remains of his ships. His officers waited nervously, knowing that failure in Vexcar culture often meant death. This human ship, Krevthak said slowly, his voice like grinding stones. Tell me everything about it. One of his tactical officers stepped forward. Our analysis suggests they used improvised weapons and psychological warfare. Their technology is primitive, but they applied it in unexpected ways. They anticipated our response and prepared accordingly. Krevthak's clawed hand clenched. So they are not strong. They are clever. Yes, Overlord. They are persistence predators. On their homeworld, they evolved by tracking prey over long distances, adapting to any environment, never giving up until the hunt was complete. They are not built for strength. They are built for endurance and adaptation. Krevthak was silent for a long moment. Then we will adapt as well. Find this human ship. Isolate it. Destroy it. Once their symbol of hope is gone, the Coalition will crumble. Back with the Coalition fleet, the Teguk was being assigned to work with Commander Yixla's squadron. The Phyraxian warrior had requested to fight alongside the humans, something unprecedented in her species' proud history. Commander Hana met with Yixla aboard the alien flagship. The Phyraxian ship was sleek and deadly, designed for maximum efficiency in combat. It made the Teguk look even more outdated by comparison. Your crew fought well, Yixla said, her compound eyes studying Hana carefully. But I do not understand your methods. You tricked the enemy. Where is the honor in that? Hana met her gaze steadily. On Earth, we learned a hard lesson over thousands of years of warfare. Honor does not keep soldiers alive. It does not protect civilians. It does not win wars. Intelligence wins wars. Adaptation wins wars. The willingness to do whatever it takes wins wars. Yixla's mandibles clicked thoughtfully. My people have become complacent. We were bred for war, but we have forgotten that war is not always about strength. Perhaps we need to remember what it means to truly fight. The combined force set out to hunt Vexcar supply lines. Intelligence suggested enemy logistics ships were operating near a dead star system. If they could disrupt the supplies, the main armada would be forced to retreat. But as they approached the target area, Captain Doyen felt something was wrong. The energy signatures were too obvious. The location too convenient, Hana, he said quietly. This feels like bait. She studied her sensors. You think it is a trap? I think the Vexcar learned from us. They know we look for unconventional approaches, so they are giving us one. Doyen opened a channel to Yixla. Commander, I recommend we proceed with extreme caution. Something is wrong here, but Yixla's warrior instincts were too strong. She saw a target and wanted to strike. My sensors show supply ships ahead. We should attack while we have the advantage. Before Doyen could argue further, Yixla's squadron accelerated toward the target. The Teguk followed, but its slow engines meant it fell behind quickly. As Yixla's ships entered the dead star system, the trap was sprung. Vexcar warships emerged from hiding spots behind dead planets and asteroid fields. They had been waiting, their systems powered down to avoid detection. Now they surrounded Yixla's squadron completely. The battle was immediate and brutal. Yixla's ships fought with incredible skill, but they were outnumbered 5-1. The Vexcar had learned from the Battle of Nexus Point. They used jamming equipment to block communications. They deployed countermeasures against standard coalition tactics. Yixla's flagship took multiple hits. Her shields were failing. All around her ships were exploding. This was exactly what the Vexcar wanted. They would destroy the alien squadron and then finish off the slow human ship that could not escape. Aboard the Teguk, Captain Doyen watched his tactical display. His crew waited for orders. They could retreat. The smart move would be to run and regroup. The Teguk was too slow to escape if it engaged. If they went in, they would likely die. Lieutenant Minho spoke from engineering. Captain, if we go in there, we might not come back out. Doyen was silent for a moment. Then he spoke, his voice calm and clear. When humanity first reached for the stars, everyone said we could not make it. Our rockets were too primitive. Our technology too basic, but we refused to give up. We adapted. We persevered. That is who we are. That is what makes us human. We do not abandon our allies and we do not run from a fight. He turned to his crew. All hands, battle stations. We are going in. The Teguk accelerated as fast as its aging engines could manage. It was not fast by any standard, but it was coming. Ensign Jiwoo opened all channels. Captain? Broadcasting now. Doyen's voice transmitted to every ship in the system, Coalition and Vexcar alike. Attention, Vexcar forces. You wanted the human ship. Here we are. But I want you to understand something. You are not hunting us. We are hunting you. Humanity evolved as persistence predators. We chased our prey across continents until it collapsed from exhaustion. We survived ice ages, plagues, and wars. We reached the stars because we refused to stop. And now you have made a critical mistake. You have our attention. The Teguk entered the battle zone. The Vexcar ships turned to face this new threat, anticipating another easy victory. They had prepared countermeasures for the human tactics from Nexus Point. But Doyen was not planning to use the same tactics twice. That was the point. Humans adapted. The Teguk did not try to maneuver or use clever tricks. Instead, it did something insane. It pretended to surrender. It powered down its weapons and transmitted a surrender code. The Vexcar, confused by this sudden capitulation, ceased fire. They moved closer to capture the ship. This was unexpected, but they would take the prize. That was when Lieutenant Minho activated his latest improvisation. The Teguk's damaged engines, which should have been offline, were actually overloaded beyond safety limits. When Minho released the containment, superheated plasma vented directly from the ship in a controlled explosion. The closest Vexcar ships were incinerated instantly. Others were damaged or disabled, and in the chaos, Ensign Jiwoo transmitted coded instructions to Commander Yixla, instructions for a coordinated counterattack. Yixla understood immediately. Her damaged ships rallied and struck at the confused enemy. The Teguk, despite the damage from venting its own engines, fired everything it had. The combined assault was devastating, but the Teguk had taken severe damage. Hull breaches on 3 decks, main power failing, casualties in engineering. Dr. Suho and his medical team worked frantically to save wounded crew members. The Vexcar retreated, their trap turned against them. As they fled, Commander Yixla's voice came across the comm. Human ship, you saved us. You charged into certain death to save warriors you barely know. I do not understand this. Captain Doyen, holding a damaged console for support, smiled through the pain. Then let me explain. On Earth, we have another saying, no one gets left behind. That is not just words. That is who we are. There was a long pause. Then Yixla spoke again, her voice filled with emotion. I understand now. You are not just clever fighters. You are true warriors. My people honor strength, but we forgot that true strength includes loyalty. The Phyraxian fleet formally requests to fight alongside humanity. We have much to learn from you. As the battered Taeguk limped back toward friendly space, the Taeguk drifted through space, held together by emergency patches and determination. Lieutenant Minho had worked miracles just keeping the engines running. The ship had taken severe damage in the rescue of Commander Yixla's squadron, but it was still operational. Barely. In the medical bay, Dr. Suho moved between patients with practiced efficiency. They had lost 12 crew members in the battle, 12 families back on Earth, who would receive the worst news possible. The doctor's hands were steady, but his heart was heavy. Captain Doyen stood in the makeshift morgue looking at the covered bodies of his crew. Commander Hana found him there, standing in silence. They died saving others, she said quietly. That does not make it easier, Doyen replied. Every loss is a failure. Every life we could not protect. You gave them purpose. That matters. Doyen turned to face her. Tell me honestly, Hana, can we keep doing this? The ship is falling apart. The crew is exhausted. How much more can we take? She met his gaze steadily. As much as we need to. Because if we stop, who else will fight the way we do? The aliens are learning from us, but they still think like aliens. We are the only ones who truly understand what it means to never surrender. Doyen nodded slowly. Then we continue. Intelligence reports arrived from Coalition Command. Overlord Krevthak was personally leading a strike force toward the colony world of New Hope. The planet held over 2 million Coalition citizens. If the Vexcar destroyed it, the psychological blow would be devastating. Admiral Threxfall wanted to fortify the colony and wait for reinforcements. It was the logical choice, the safe choice, but Captain Doyen had a different idea. He called a meeting of the Coalition commanders. This time, when he spoke, they listened. We intercept them in deep space before they reach New Hope, Doyen said, studying the star charts. If we wait at the colony, we fight on his terms. But if we hit him during transit, we choose the battlefield. Threxfall's crystalline face showed concern. Captain, your ship is barely functional, and the enemy outnumbers us significantly. This would be extremely dangerous. Everything we have done has been dangerous, Doyen replied. But we are still here. Humans learned long ago that the best defense is not sitting behind walls waiting. The best defense is making sure your enemy is too busy defending himself to attack you. Commander Yixla's mandibles clicked in agreement. The human is right. My people forgot this lesson. We became reactive instead of proactive. I vote we follow his strategy. Other commanders voiced their support. Admiral Threxvall finally nodded. Very well. We will intercept the enemy fleet. But I must ask, Captain Doyen, what happens if this plan fails? Doyen smiled grimly. Then we make sure it does not fail. The Coalition fleet set out to hunt the hunters. They tracked the Vexcar strike force through regions of space where sensors barely worked, through nebulae thick with radiation, through gravity wells that made navigation treacherous. The Taeguk struggled to keep up, but it refused to fall behind. Lieutenant Minho worked around the clock in engineering. He was surviving on coffee and stubbornness. His team was the same. They performed repairs that should have been impossible, keeping the ancient vessel running through sheer force of will. Ensign Jiwoo had changed since the beginning of the war. She no longer looked like a nervous young officer. Her hands were steady on her console. Her voice was calm when she reported enemy positions. She had found her purpose in the chaos. The pursuit lasted for days. The crew barely slept. They ate at their stations. They worked until they could barely stand, then worked some more. This was what humans did. They endured. Finally, they found Overlord Krevthak's fleet, but they had walked into a trap, again. The Vexcar had known they were being followed. They had led the Coalition fleet to a prepared ambush point. Hidden ships emerged from every direction. The Coalition was surrounded and outnumbered 3-1. Admiral Threxvall's voice was tight with stress. All ships, defensive formation. Prepare for Captain Doyen, cut him off. Admiral, with respect, defensive formations will not save us. We are outnumbered, outgunned. If we try to fight carefully, we will lose. Then what do you suggest? We stop trying to survive, Doyen said. We make them wish they had never started this fight. He opened a channel to all Coalition ships. All vessels, listen carefully. Today we are going to teach the Vexcar why you do not corner a human. On Earth, our ancestors were hunters. Not the fastest or strongest, but the most persistent. When prey ran, we followed. When it hid, we found it. When it fought, we outlasted it. We are persistence predators, and that means one thing: we never stop coming. He paused, then continued with quiet intensity. The Vexcar think they have trapped us. They are wrong. We have trapped them, because now they have to face something they cannot prepare for. They have to face humans who refuse to lose. All ships, attack pattern chaos. No formation, no predictable tactics, just hunt. The Coalition fleet abandoned all conventional tactics and charged directly at the Vexcar flagship. Every ship, human and alien alike, focused on one target: Overlord Krevthak. What followed was the most brutal space battle in galactic history. Ships collided at full speed, weapons fired at point-blank range, boarding parties fought hand-to-hand in corridors and airlocks. It was chaos. It was violent. It was completely unpredictable, and the Vexcar, who had planned every detail of their ambush, could not cope with complete chaos. The Taeguk drove straight toward the enemy flagship like a battering ram. Lieutenant Minho made one last desperate move. He overloaded the reactor to create a massive electromagnetic pulse just like at Nexus Point. But this time he used more power, dangerous amounts of power. "Sir, this will disable our systems too," Minho warned. "Do it," Doyen ordered. The pulse detonated, and every ship within range lost power. Coalition and Vexcar vessels went dark. They drifted helplessly, nothing more than floating metal boxes. But humans had one advantage. They were used to working with limited resources. While alien crews panicked in the darkness, the Taeguk's crew immediately went to emergency protocols. They had trained for this. They were prepared. Commander Hana led a boarding party to the Vexcar flagship. They wore emergency suits and carried primitive weapons. Bullets and blades, not energy weapons. Things that worked without power. The Vexcar warriors fought fiercely, but they had never faced humans in close combat. Humans who had evolved fighting each other for millions of years. Humans who knew 1,000 ways to hurt and kill without fancy technology. Commander Hana fought her way to the bridge. She found Overlord Krevthak there, surrounded by his elite guards. The reptilian warlord stared at her with his cold eyes. "You cannot defeat us," he said. "Even if you take this ship, my empire will send more fleets. You are just one species. You are weak." Hana removed her helmet so he could see her face. "Weak? You have no idea what weak means. Humans survived ice ages that killed most life on our planet. We survived plagues that wiped out half our population. We survived wars that should have destroyed us. We did not survive because we were strong. We survived because we were too stubborn to die. That is what makes us dangerous. Not our ships or our weapons, our refusal to accept defeat." She raised her weapon. "You are done. Your fleet is broken. Surrender now, or we will make sure history remembers the Vexcar Empire as the species that picked a fight with humanity and lost." Krevthak looked around at his disabled ship, at the human boarding parties overwhelming his forces, at the impossible situation he had walked into. For the first time in his life, the great warlord understood fear. He lowered his weapons. "I surrender." As power slowly returned to the ships, the scope of the battle became clear. Both sides had taken heavy losses. The Taeguk was barely a functioning vessel anymore. But the Vexcar strike force was completely destroyed, and their leader was in chains. Captain Doyen stood on his damaged bridge looking at the wreckage floating in space. They had won, but the cost was almost unbearable. So many ships destroyed, so many lives lost. Commander Hana returned to the Taeguk with Overlord Krevthak in custody. She found Doyen staring out at the stars. "We did it," she said simply. "Yes," Doyen replied. "Now we see if peace is possible." Admiral Threxful's voice came over the comm, filled with emotion. "Captain Doyen, on behalf of the Coalition, thank you. Today you showed us what true courage means. The galaxy will not forget this." As the battered Coalition fleet began the long journey home, one thing was certain. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, not through superior technology or overwhelming force, but through the simple, stubborn refusal to give up. The mockery had ended. Now there was only respect. The Coalition fleet limped back to friendly space. Ships that had once been pristine and powerful now bore the scars of battle. Hull breaches, scorched armor, disabled systems. But they were alive. They had survived. The Taeguk looked worse than any other vessel. Parts of its hull were held together with emergency patches. One engine was completely offline. Several sections were exposed to vacuum. By any reasonable standard, the ship should have been scrapped, but it was still flying. In the medical bay, Dr. Suho finished treating the last of the wounded. He had not slept in 3 days. His hands shook with exhaustion, but his eyes were clear. They had lost 37 crew members in total, too many. But hundreds more had survived because of the choices they had made. The memorial service was held in the cargo bay, the only space large enough for the entire crew. Captain Doyen stood before the assembled personnel, looking at the names of the fallen displayed on a screen. These people, he said quietly, died doing what humans have always done. They stood between danger and those who needed protection. They refused to run when running would have been easier. They embodied the best of what our species can be. He paused, looking around at the crew. Some were crying. Others stood at attention, faces grim. All of them bore the marks of war. We did not start this conflict, but we finished it. Not because we were the strongest or the fastest, but because we were the most determined. That is humanity's gift to the galaxy. We teach everyone else what it means to never give up. The crew saluted their fallen comrades. In the silence that followed, Ensign Jiwoo thought about how much she had changed. She had boarded the Taeguk as a nervous young officer afraid of failure. Now she was a veteran who understood what true courage meant. A galactic tribunal was convened to judge Overlord Krevtak. Representatives from every coalition species gathered to witness the proceedings. The captured warlord stood in chains, his reptilian face showing no emotion. Captain Doyen was called to testify. He walked to the center of the vast chamber, feeling the eyes of 100 species upon him. Captain, the chief magistrate said, "You have fought this enemy more than anyone. What punishment do you recommend?" Doyen looked at Krevtak for a long moment. On Earth, we have learned that revenge and justice are not the same thing. The Vexkar attacked us because they saw weakness. They are predators who only understand strength. By defeating them, we have taught them a lesson they will not forget. He turned to address the tribunal. "I recommend exile, not execution. Send Krevtak back to his people with a message. Tell them the coalition is no longer prey. Tell them we have humans now and humans do not know how to quit. Give the Vexkar Empire a choice, peace or annihilation. I believe they will choose wisely." The tribunal deliberated. Many wanted harsher punishment. But Doyen's words carried weight. The human had proven his wisdom in battle. Perhaps his wisdom extended to peace as well. They voted for exile. Krevtak was sent back to his empire with a stark warning. The Vexkar leadership, seeing their greatest warlord returned in disgrace, understood the message. They sued for peace. The war was over. In the weeks that followed, humanity's reputation transformed overnight. The species that had been mocked and dismissed was now respected throughout the galaxy. Fear and admiration mixed in equal measure. Admiral Threxfall came to the Taeguk personally to apologize. He found Captain Doyen in the observation deck staring at the stars. "Captain, I owe you more than an apology. I owe you my life and the lives of everyone in the coalition. When I first saw your ship, I saw only what it lacked. I failed to see what it had, and what was that?" Doyen asked a crew that refused to lose. "My people, the Kiltharians, have had advanced technology for thousands of years. We thought that made us superior. But we forgot that technology is just a tool. What matters is the will to use it." "You reminded us of that." Doyen smiled slightly. "We are all learning from each other, Admiral. That is what the coalition should be about." Commander Yixla also came to pay her respects. The proud Phyraxian warrior bowed to the human captain, a gesture of profound respect in her culture. "You saved my squadron when you had every reason to flee," she said. "You fought beside us when we barely knew you. My people value strength above all else, but you taught us that true strength includes loyalty and courage. The Phyraxian military has begun studying human tactics. We want to learn your ways. We would be honored to teach you," Doyen replied. The Coalition Council made an official offer. They would build humanity new warships, state-of-the-art vessels with the latest technology. The Taeguk would be retired with full honors. Doyen gathered his senior officers to discuss the offer. They met in the captain's ready room, the same room where they had planned so many impossible victories. "New ships would be nice," Lieutenant Minho admitted. "These engines are held together with hope and improvisation at this point. But would it be the same?" Ensign Jiwoo asked. "This ship made history. Would we want to leave it behind?" Commander Hana looked at Doyen. "What do you think, Captain?" Doyen was quiet for a moment. The Teguk is old and slow. Its systems are outdated. By every logical measure, we should accept the offer and get better ships. He smiled. But logic is not why we won this war. We won because we proved that determination matters more than technology. If we accept new ships, we send a message that we needed them, that we were not good enough as we were. I say we decline the offer. We keep this ship and we show the galaxy that humans do not need the newest or the best. We just need the will to fight. The crew agreed unanimously. They would keep the Teguk instead. Humanity accepted a different role. The coalition asked them to establish a training program. Human officers would teach other species about adaptive tactics, psychological warfare, and the principles of never surrendering. The Teguk would become a mobile academy, traveling to different coalition worlds to share humanity's hard-won wisdom. Dr. Suho established the first interspecies medical institute, combining human medicine with alien knowledge. Treatments that had been impossible became routine. Lives that would have been lost were saved. Lieutenant Minho became a legend in engineering circles. Alien engineers traveled across the galaxy to learn from the human, who could make anything work with limited resources. Commander Hana was offered an admiral position, commanding entire fleets. She turned it down. Her place was on the Teguk, beside the captain who had taught her that wisdom mattered more than rank. Ensign Jiwoo, now promoted to lieutenant, trained new communication officers. She taught them that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. Months later, Captain Doyen stood on the bridge of the Teguk as it prepared to depart for its first training mission. Commander Hana joined him, and they looked at the view screen showing the vast expanse of space. Thinking about something? Hana asked. About how far we have come, Doyen replied. When we left Earth, everyone thought we were inferior. Our ships were too slow. Our technology too primitive. But we proved that those things do not matter. What matters is who we are, Hana said. Exactly. We are persistence hunters. We are survivors. We are the species that looked at the impossible and said, "Watch us do it anyway." Ensign Jiwoo reported from her station. Captain, incoming transmission from Coalition Command. They are sending us to 12 different systems. Everyone wants to learn from the humans. Lieutenant Minho groaned good-naturedly. 12 systems? I'm going to need more duct tape, the crew laughed. It felt good to laugh after so much pain and loss. They had survived. They had won. And now they had a new mission. Set course for our first destination, Doyen ordered. It is time to teach the galaxy what humanity has always known. That the size of your ship does not matter. The power of your weapons does not matter. What matters is that you never, ever give up. The Teguk turned slowly, its aged engines pushing it forward at the same plodding pace that had once been cause for mockery. But nobody was laughing anymore. They were watching with respect and admiration, because that slow, outdated human warship had taught the galaxy a lesson they would never forget. It was not about having the best technology or the fastest ships. It was about having the courage to face impossible odds and the determination to keep fighting when everyone else had given up. Years later, throughout Coalition space, young recruits of every species learned about the Battle of Nexus Point. They learned about the Teguk and its crew. They learned about Captain Kim Doyen and how he turned humanity's greatest weakness into their greatest strength. And when those young recruits asked what made humans so formidable, their instructors always gave the same answer. Humans are persistence hunters. They evolved by chasing prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. They survived countless disasters by refusing to die. They reached the stars because they would not accept any other outcome. And once they decide you are their target, they will never stop coming. Not ever. That is what makes them dangerous. Not their technology. Not their weapons. Their absolute, unshakable refusal to surrender. Aboard the Teguk, Captain Doyen stood at his command chair, watching the stars stream by. His ship was old and slow and battered, but it was still flying, still serving, still teaching the galaxy what it meant to be human, and that was enough. The end.